G'day guys, Lindemann here in DCS World, covering taxi, takeoff, navigation and landing in the A10C Warthog. Got the aircraft up and running. We're about ready to start our taxi, so I'm going to contact air traffic control in Caballetti and request the taxi to the runway.
Caballetti, infield 1-1. Request taxi to runway.
Running a light aircraft today. We'll review our flight plan while we wait for the air traffic control. You can see that we are heading out to sea, coming into the abandoned airfield, heading off to the south and then coming back in to land. Alright, we're cleared to taxi to runway 7, which we can see is going this direction over here, which would be left to right into the sun. And the runway heading number 7, times it by 10 to get the approximate heading of the runway. So we'll give everything a final check, make sure we've got the nose wheel steering engaged with the nose wheel steering button on the joystick, and we can start our taxi roll. We'll take a left turn over here, head off towards our runway. Okay, it's pretty easy to follow the taxi lines where you see them. Just make sure I've got myself in nav mode with the master mode button. It's the M key on the keyboard. We'll be keeping it pretty much nice and simple. Now if I select coolie hat up, you'll see that there is a very small asterisk that appears on the left side. That means that the HUD is currently my sensor of interest, and any manipulation that I make is on the HUD, so you can see that small box there moving around. If I choose DMS up, I can cycle between my waypoints. Now I've got the steer point mode in flight plan, so I'm cycling the flight plan between initial position, waypoint 1, 2, 3. So we'll get waypoint up as our current steer point. And if you can't see that, we'll zoom right in again. Here is the waypoint number, waypoint 1, its name, its distance, and the amount of time it will take to get there, and the amount of time it will be when we get there. So some information. Of course, it's not too relevant right now because we aren't moving. We'll do the pre-flight check now that we are here. We'll get flaps to 1, 10 degrees down flaps, check our air brakes, extend fully, and collapse down. We'll also check our ailerons, articulate properly. We'll check the rudder, can barely see them. Yep, that one is moving, and that one is moving. The next thing we'll do is get our canopy down and locked with the right click of the button, like so. Looking good. We'll contact air traffic control, let them know that we are ready to take off.
Caballetti, infield 1-1. Request takeoff.
And we'll arm the ejection seat prior to takeoff. Now, the air traffic control always denies you and then changes their mind. Okay, 29.86. We've got here a dial on the altimeter, and we can calibrate that like so, 2986, so our altitude is aligned with the air pressure at Caballetti Airbase. Okay, flaps 1. Got a light aircraft, so it'll be pretty easy to take off. What I'm going to do is just get on that center line, and that should do, and we'll get on the brakes, power the engines up, it's stabilized, and we're ready to go. Full power, just a bit of nose wheel steering there is a bit of wind, about 4 meters per second. At 70 knots, we're going to turn off nose wheel steering, and at 120 we will rotate. There we are, rotate. Positive rate of climb. G key for gear up. Flaps up. I can't really see the HUD, so I'm having to use the dials here. We're approaching 200 knots. Looking at the front dash, climb rate of 2,000 feet per minute. Okay, we're clear of the airfield now, so we'll start a left turn. Just using some rudder to do a coordinated turn as best I can. Okay, now that steer point box that you see at the top of the HUD says 50 and underneath it 8.4. That means it was 50 degrees away and 8.4 miles. It's now down to 7.7. And there we are. So we're at 1,234 feet. Coming up, this box here is our steer point, our current steer point. This is the TVV. That is the direction that the airplane is traveling. So wherever you put that, that's where you're going. So if I put this directly over my current steer point, I'm heading directly towards it, like so. So it's pretty easy to navigate to your steer points. It's pretty easy to do anything with that TVV as long as it is still alive. If you get damaged and it vanishes, then you're back to the good old-fashioned days of judging with your eyes where you're going. Okay, getting pretty close. We're down to 3.5, 3.2 miles. We've got 34 seconds until we are at our first steer point. Crack the engines right back, and we can prepare for that turn. Got a nice light aircraft apart from quite a bit of fuel. Okay, 17 seconds, 15 seconds until waypoint, steer point. Now if I use coolie hat left, I can change the TAD on the left hand side to be my sensor of interest, and DMS up, I can zoom right in. Okay, we've just passed our steer point, and the next steer point has automatically been selected, number 2, 5.4 miles away and 1 minute flight time. So I'll just do a sharp turn. There it is there. You can see the steering line is coming off the steer point and it heads towards the TVV. So let me just zoom in a bit. You can see the steering line helps me find where I should be going. They kind of lead off, and if I were to get that steer point off to the side, you can see the steering line points off the TVV towards the steer point. So really that's just the line that you need to follow to figure out where you should be heading. Symbology is all very useful. Now this is a steer point which is actually at an altitude of 500 feet, so we can come in a wee bit low. We'll zoom that out. Now if you look at the TAD, you can see the SPI is a little wedding cake symbol which is over the yellow steer point. That little white wedding cake signal means that is the sensor point of interest, and that is what is currently chosen, or currently what all the sensors are looking at as their point of interest. Okay, steer point is around here. The number above the steer point is the degrees that it is off the nose. So if I were to turn off to the left, you'll see the steer point there says 10 degrees off the nose, 6.1 miles away, 20 degrees off the nose, 5.9 miles away. So even if it's away, you can still get an idea of how far you need to turn and change your turn rate to suit. Okay, we'll get that TVV directly over the steer point and head off there. I think this one is slightly higher altitude than we were, so we're just heading back up. We'll gain some altitude. And we can see how we're doing here. Currently this green box around the TAD means it is sensor of interest. It is what we're manipulating with the HOTAS controls. And you can see that like so. As I move things, I'm manipulating the TAD as my sensor because it is sensor of interest. You can see that wedding cake symbol there is the SPI. Now by default SPI is set to steer point, so that'll be important when you are finding targets. Understanding the sensor of interest and the SPI will be critical to getting bombs on targets and finding things. Okay, just give this a bit of a fly around and we'll start a left hand turn with a bit of left rudder. $100 degrees, 90 degrees, 60 degrees, 12 miles, 40, 30, 20, 10, and there it is. Excellent. Alright, 2,000 feet. At this point, we'll let the air traffic control, Carboletti, we'll let them know that we are inbound. Just trim. Okay, we're just going to head left slightly. If we look at the TAD, you can see we're off our flight, and we'll just swing it back to the right, get a little bit closer to our flight plan, like so. So it's pretty easy to fly using the HUD if you're used to flying aircraft that don't have all of this information available. It certainly becomes much easier to fly with that TVV, total velocity vector, showing you where the aircraft is really heading. It means you can fly very close to the ground and know that you're not going to hit it as long as you keep that TVV off the ground. Okay, I've just engaged the autopilot and I'm on the course line now, so I'll get that right over the steer point and engage autopilot. Looks like I'm a little bit high. I probably want to be at 1,500 feet actually, so I'm going to engage path mode, put it in a bit of a descent, and engage path hold, and it will hold that path. You see I've basically got my course over the steer point, so I'm going to get pretty close. You can see my rate of descent and my altitude is ticking down, and I'm going to want to get into a landing configuration for Carboletti Airfield. Just killed my master light switch, I'll just turn that back on. Alright, so we've got a visual. Air traffic control is usually something that you can largely ignore, unfortunately. So we'll just beat our own track coming in. If I zoom out, you can see basically where we are heading. Pretty easy. Okay, I'm going to make that turn in 24 seconds. You can see that once again. 20 seconds, 19 seconds, like so. Alright, we'll start that turn. We'll decrease power. We're just slightly lower than our assigned altitude of 1,500 feet. So we'll do a slow turn, reducing power, reducing speed, and slightly climbing. Alright, keeping that slip ball roughly in a coordinated turn. We're slightly off track now because of that slow turn there. Just reduce, descend. We're 6 miles, 1,400 feet. Okay, 1 degree of flaps. And at this point we can get the air brakes out, so we land with air brakes. The reason for that is that it's much easier to pull the brakes in than it is to spool the engines up. Getting the gear down. We'll go full flaps. Okay, so the landing speed is going to be about 120 knots plus a couple of knots for every expensive item on the aircraft, which we don't really have any, but we do have a lot of fuel. So we'll land at about our current speed. of 130. Now we want to be a little bit more off to the left, so I'm just rolling it to the right and ruddering to compensate. And we can really just fly that TVV like so. Probably a little bit more off to the left. Okay, 3.4 miles to go. Give it a final check, 3 down in green, full flaps. That's one item that I have neglected, and that is the landing light. There we go, landing light's on. Just took my hand off the joystick there to manipulate the mouse.
Altitude, altitude.
Alright. So if you're not sure which way to land, generally you land into the wind, and it's the same for takeoff as well. We're just keeping this TVV over the airfield. The wind is pushing me off to the right, but that's alright, we can compensate. Coming in, keeping that TVV where we want to land. Probably want to lose a bit of speed. You can see the landing lights coming into effect here. That's about a good speed now. We'll kill power, full air brakes, flare, land with main wheels first, and air brake the aircraft by keeping the nose off the ground in a high drag position, and then we'll descend. Okay, we'll get the flaps up, and we want to roll this out. You can use the brakes, but the brakes are not to bring you down to taxi speed. It's a full rollout with the air brakes. They're not very big brakes, and hot brakes can hurt people, so we'll just use the brakes to get us into taxi speeds right at the end after we've done a full rollout. And that helps other aircraft land as well, because they can come down and not worry about a plane stopping too quickly. We'll get the nose wheel steering on as well. Okay, and now we are back after doing an extremely short flight. We'll get the air brakes in, flaps are already up. Taxi to parking area following this taxi line. Okay, now the navigation system will do an alignment as you arrive, so don't be too startled by the master caution warning as that kicks in. Okay, I'll just act that no SPI. There it is. CDU reset. Looks like we're all back. Now I'm going to make an attempt at parking. Try this. It's going to go fairly wrong sometimes because I don't have any way of reversing. This would be probably a bit easier with depth perception. Nope, can't get into that one. We'll try this one here. And that will do. Okay, now we're parked, we can shut the aircraft down. I'll end it here. Thanks for watching. This was a quick video showing basic navigation, taxi, takeoff and landing in the A10C in DCS World.